Good day to you. This is part 3 of Deadly Drug series. I am reading a book of Deadly Medicine and Organized Crime, How Big Pharma has Corrupted Healthcare. This is Kadal Amadam from Chennai. Despite the weight of federal and state investigations of the Risperdal allegations, Johnson & Johnson Board of Directors rewarded Gorski, the corrupted person, by selecting him to be the next CEO. It's like in the mob. The greater the crime, the greater the advancement. From 1997 to 2001, Merck Salesforce used approximately 15 different programs to induce doctors to prescribe its drug. These programs primarily consisted of excess payments to doctors disguised as fees for training, consultation, or market research. My survey showed that corporate crime is common and that the crimes are ruthlessly carried out with blatant disregard for the deaths and other serious harms to they cause. You will see in the rest of this book that corporate crime kills people and it also involves huge theft of taxpayers' money. Sanofi Aventis boasted that the launch of Keytruda was the most successful launch of any antibiotic in history. However, already 7 months after the launch, the first death in liver failure was reported and more cases followed. The FDA held an emergency meeting among senior managers, which do not include the safety officers, and announced that the drug was safe. With reference to the study the FDA knew was fraudulent. 1 month later, one of the reviewers for Keytruda alerted FDA senior management to the irregularities, but no substantive actions were taken. And some months later, when 23 cases of severe liver injury and 4 deaths had been reported, the FDA's Commissioner Andrew Van Isselbash prohibited the scientists to discuss Keytruda outside the agency. It's also important to note that many of the crimes would have been impossible to carry out if doctors had not been willing to participate in them. Doctors are complicit in the crime when they accept kickbacks and engage in other types of corruption, often in relation to illegal marketing. It is curious that doctors can get away with getting paid by the companies for doing exactly this without being punished. When drugs are marketed for non-approved users, we don't know whether they are effective or whether they are too harmful, e.g. if used in children. This practice has therefore been described as using the citizens as guinea pigs on a large scale without their informed consent. Many crimes involve large-scale corruption of doctors who receive money to induce them to prescribe drugs that are often 10 or 20 times more expensive than older drugs that are equally good and sometimes even better. Bribery is routine and involves large amounts of money. Almost every type of person who can affect the interest of the industry has been bribed. Doctors, hospital administrators, cabinet ministers, health inspectors, custom officers, tax assessors, drug registration officials, factory inspectors, pricing officials, and political parties. In Latin America, posts as ministers of health are avidly sought, as these ministers are almost invariably rich when wealth coming from the drug industry. If we treat patients with depression in primary care with an antidepressant drug for 6 weeks, about 60% of them will improve. This seems like a good effect. However, if we treat the patient with a blinded placebo that looks just the same as the active pill, 50% of them will improve. Most doctors interpret this as a large placebo effect, but it isn't possible to interpret the result in this way. If you don't treat the patient at all, but just see them again after 6 weeks, many of them will also have improved. We call this the spontaneous remission of the disease or its natural course. The thalidomide disaster marked a watershed in drug regulation. The drug, which was produced by the German drug maker Grünenthal, was marketed for a broad range of indications including pregnancy-induced nausea, although it hadn't been adequately tested in pregnant animals. Before long, the first reports of children being born with an extremely rare condition, phocomelia, which means that lack of arms and legs, were repeated to Grunenthal. The company ignored the reports and didn't take any action, although the reports continued to flow in. It was a classical case of profits before patients. It didn't matter how seriously malformed the children were and how many they were, as long as the company managed to keep the reports secret. The best drugs may simply be those with the most shamelessly biased data. Bias is often introduced already in the design of the trial, but independent physicians who challenge the design can be fired, and many may acquire a negative reputation among the other drug companies as well for not being cooperative. A saying commonly attributed to Joseph Stalin is that those who cast a vote decide nothing, and whereas those who count the vote decide everything. The drug industry has hijacked clinical trials for a marketing purposes. They have been making a mockery of clinical investigation, misusing a powerful tool, and betraying the trust and altruism patients exhibit when they volunteer to participate in trials. This study shows that academic drug research in the United States has been almost totally corrupted by industry. The companies shop between the various academic centers and choose those who are least willing to raise uncomfortable questions. The associations of American medical colleges held talks with drug company officials to explore the development of standardized contract terms, but the discussion fell apart when drug company executives balked. In his autobiography, The Grand Old Man in Swedish Medicine, cardiologist Lars Verko tells a similar story. Verko spent many successful years at Astra and became the head of its pharmaceutical division, but the company deteriorated when a salesman took over as CEO and started to focus on cough medicines and other useless, bizarre products. Instead of continuing saving people's lives with drugs against heart attack and stroke, Verko was thrown out of the board of directors after he had pointed out on several occasions that the proposals about research put forward by the CEO, who knew virtually nothing about medical research, were based on erroneous assumptions. In 2002, the combined profits of the 10 drug companies in Fortune 500 exceeded the profits of all the other 490 businesses put together. When a study showed that the children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder ADHD had smaller brain than other children and critics suspected it might be a drug effect, access to the data was denied. A gigantic trial of steroids given to 10,000 people with serious brain injuries, the CRASH trial, was published in the Lancet, and it showed that steroids are very harmful. For every 31 patients treated with steroids rather than placebo, there was one additional death. Thousands of patients with spinal cord or brain injuries have died because they were given steroids, and the fishing expedition in the New England Journal of Medicine is to be blamed for many of these deaths. Scientific dishonesty can kill people, and it often does. Let me conclude this book with this chapter, and then I will make another video for the rest of the book. Few more videos will be coming in this series. Thank you for watching. Once again, I want to tell you that it's highly depressing to go through the book thinking the number of deaths caused by the drug industry. Do not forget to subscribe my channel so that we can view more of this nature. Good day to you. This is Kadal Ramadhan from Chennai signing off.